Here, visitor. You are about to embark on a journey of discovery through the rich and fascinating history of classical Greece. You'll become fully immersed in the painstakingly detailed world built for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which you are free to explore at your own pace, without any danger or time pressure. For a directed experience, take one of the many guided tours curated by prominent historians and archaeologists. Along the way, exchange words with some of Greece's most famous historical persons. The classical Greece you are about to explore is at the peak of its glory. This period is synonymous with grand accomplishments of the physical and the mental. Architectural marvels which still stand today dot its landscape, while towering achievements in philosophy, political systems, and art still influence our modern society in profound ways. We hope you become engrossed in the dazzling riches of ancient Greece and welcome you to your visit.
Greetings, wanderer, and welcome to the Acropolis, the shining jewel of Athens. My name is Aspasia. Though I am not originally from Athens, I have climbed to the top of its social ladder using my wit and intellect. I've even earned the love of Pericles, one of the most powerful men in the city. The mind truly is a beautiful thing. Personally, I think the Acropolis is one of, if not the, greatest place in all of Greece. Though, considering it was the project of my partner, Pericles, I may be a touch biased. The Acropolis of Athens is a bastion of art and culture worthy of the gods themselves. Within this citadel, you will find many important sacred buildings, as well as some of the most magnificent art in all of Greece. You are in for a very enlightening visit. When you're done, come find me, and we can discuss the things you have seen. Farewell for now.
The Acropolis has gone through many changes in its long history. It began as a simple rock, was settled as early as the Neolithic period, and then became a fortress in the Mycenaean period. Stone buildings started appearing in the 7th century BCE. But the famous structures whose ruins remain visible today date mainly from a period of construction in the 5th century BCE. The location of the Acropolis is closely tied with Athens' foundation myth. Supposedly, it was the site where Athena and Poseidon competed for the city's patronage. This connection gave the Acropolis a sacred aura, and it was considered the religious heart of the city. The Temple of Athena Nike was built on the remains of old fortifications from the Mycenaean era. Worship at the temple can be traced back to the 6th century BCE, but the building itself was destroyed during the Greco-Persian Wars a century later. It was rebuilt during the Peloponnesian War. Given that the name Athena Nike roughly means Athena of victory, it was likely constructed in the hopes that Athens would win the war. Unusually, the temple depicts historical scenes of battles against the Persians instead of the more mythologically inclined art of other Greek buildings. The temple's priestess was chosen randomly among the Athenians and received a salary of 50 drachmae annually, along with skins and trophies from sacrificed animals. The Acropolis was built up over a long period, due in no small part to its partial destruction during the Greco-Persian Wars. It was in the 5th century BCE, though, that the Acropolis received its most significant improvements. This period was an extremely prosperous time for Athens, both financially and culturally. With a booming economy bolstered by trade and the Lavrion silver mines, Pericles, the leader of Athens, financed a huge project to rebuild the citadel. He enlisted the help of renowned artists, like the sculptor Phidias, as well as the architects Iktinos and Callicrates. Together, they erected buildings like the Parthenon and the Propylaea Gateway. Pericles' goal was to make the Acropolis into a glorious monument to the gods and to mortal Athenians.
Η τραγωδία κινείται μεταξύ τριών βαθμίδων. Δις συνεκτιμήσε δεόντως το απροσδόκητο του πελάτη.
Behind the Propylaea was the giant bronze statue of Athena Promachos, or Athena who fights on the front lines. That name was reflected in the spear and shield the statue held in its hands. It was erected in the mid-5th century BCE by the artist Phidias. According to an inscription, it took 9 years to make and cost almost 500,000 drachmae. At approximately 10 meters tall, the statue was apparently so large that Pausanias claimed its helmet and spear tip could be seen from the sea near Cape Sunion, 60 kilometers away. The ornamentation on the statue's shield was engraved by the metalsmith Mies. The Aerophoroi were young girls between the ages of 7 and 11 who were in charge of special rites. A list of 4 girls was drafted by the Assembly of Citizens, from which the High Magistrate, the Archon Basileus, chose 2 to serve as Aerophoroi for the year. The girls lived in a house on the Acropolis. They were in charge of carrying sacred objects and weaving the peplos of Athena. The peplos was a sacred robe offered to Athena during Panathenaea, a festival held in her honor. The Erechtheion was an atypical temple. It was dedicated not only to Athena Polias, but also to Cecrops, the mythical founder of Athens, his son Erechtheos, and even Poseidon, the sea god who challenged Athena for possession of the city. The temple was divided into sections. The eastern part housed a statue dedicated to Athena, while the western section jointly belonged to Poseidon and Erechtheos. Meanwhile, King Cecrops' grave was believed to be under the caryatid porch. Under the temple was a crypt that was said to contain the sacred snakes of Athena. The snakes may have had a sweet tooth because the priestesses of Athena allegedly fed them honey cakes. The Parthenon is one of the most well-known buildings in the world and an enduring symbol of ancient Greek civilization. While it is located on the Acropolis, the building is not a traditional temple. It was built by the sculptor Phidias and the architects Callicrates and Ictinus as a great monument to the glory of the city of Athens. That glory is evident in its many carvings. One of the most carved monuments in Greek architecture, the Parthenon's decorations depict several mythological scenes. These include the birth of Athena, her fight against Poseidon for the patronage of Athens, the gods' battle with the giants, and the procession of the great Panathenaea. The Parthenon's inner chamber, or cella, contained a massive statue of Athena that was considered to be one of the sculptor Phidias's greatest masterpieces. The statue was chryselephantine, a combination of gold and ivory. To justify the steep cost of its construction, Pericles told Athenians that the statue was a gold reserve, which could be disassembled in times of economic distress. The cella also allegedly contained a pool, whose main purpose was to control the room's humidity, which helped preserve the statue's ivory.
Ως πατήρ, είστε ανέσχυτος ξέπτυσή του.
Athens' treasury was located in the Parthenon, where it was believed to be protected by Athena herself. The treasury contained objects of great value, acquired from different conquests, as well as a mass of minted silver coins and various offerings to Athena. Pericles also decided to move the entirety of the Delian League's treasure to the Parthenon in 454 BCE. This was a great testament to Athens' power over the rest of Greece. The riches were divided into two parts: the Demosia, which belonged to the city, and the Hiera Cremata, which was dedicated to the goddess and only used for religious purposes.
And what did you think of the Acropolis? It truly is quite something, isn't it? A sacred sanctuary and an architectural marvel, all in one. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.
Επικαλούμε σε Μάκαρ, πολυώνυμε, περίπολε και τελετάρχα, Θεόν Πάτερ, Ιδέ και Ιε.
Επικαλούμε σε Μάκαρ, πολυώνυμε, περίπολε και τελετάρχα, Θεόν Πάτερ, Ιδέ και Ιε.
Είστε συμβρίων και χαρημένος
ρημάτων, Φωτριόκος με οδηγέ των κομμών. Ελθέ, Μάκαρ, μίστε συμβρίων και χαρημένος εεί.
Μεγαλώνυμε και πολυώνυμε, Θονία και θηροκτώνε.
Επικαλούμε σε Μάκαρ, πολυώνυμε, περίπολε και τελετάρχα, Θεόν Πάτερ, Ιδέ και Ιε.
You're confident enough for a test? Very well. Let us see how much you know. Which two gods competed for Athens' patronage? Not quite. Although Athena and Ares did fight each other in the Trojan War, with Athena siding with the Greeks and her brother supporting Troy. Correct. It was Poseidon and Athena who fought for Athens' patronage. As for who won, the answer is in the city's name. On to the next question. Who sculpted the statue of Athena in the Parthenon?
Ελθέ Θεά σώτηρα, άκουσα καλούς καρδούς από γέης ειρήνης τερατίνη, καλυφλόκαμον υγείαν Θεό, Θεά έμδρομε, πέμπης της ωραίων κεφαλάς, νόσουστε κι άλλοι,
Τυρ πολύ ολβέ, πολύ λίστη λιτήρα κακόν, εις τρούσα βρωτών ψυχάσεις.
Μεγαλώνει με και πολιώνει
Δώσ' ειρήνη
φωνία και πυροκτώνε,
και κόρον
φυλαγρώτη και λυτηρία, τριμονίτης και βρωτών ελπίς, ελθέ, τι κατέχεις ωραίων δρυμούς, ελθέ Θεά σώτηρα, άκουσα καλούς καρπούς, απογέης ειρήνην τερατήν, καλυπλόκαμον τη υγείαν, και ο Θεά εύθρωμε, πέμφεις της ωραίων
Who
και
sculpted the statue of Athena in the Parthenon?
φυλαγρώτη και λυτηρία, τριμονίτης και βρωτών ελπίς, ελθέ. Η κατέχεις ωραίων δρυμούς, ελθέ Θεά σώτηρα. Άκουσα καλούς καρπούς.
Correct. The renowned sculptor Phidias made the statue, which was considered one of his masterpieces. And now, the final question. Which king's tomb was believed to be under the caryatid porch?
ενόρες, λαυκό, ευρεσίτεχνε, πολυλίστη βασίλεια, ο εολόμος
Μεγαλώνει
και
με και
αγιωτάτη.
πολιώνει με, φωνία και θηροκτώνε, φυλαγρώτη και λυτηρία, δρυμονίτης και βρωτών ελπίς ελθέ, η κατέχεις ωραίων δρυμούς, ελθέ Θεά σώτηρα, άκουσα καλούς καρπούς από γέης, ειρήνη, τερατή, καλυπλόκαμον ψυγεία, και ο Θεά εύρωμε, πέμπτης της ωραίων και θαλάσσης.
I'm afraid not. Menelaos was known for two things. Perseus slew the Gorgon Medusa. That is correct. Cecrops was the mythological first king of Athens, and his tomb was said to be under the Erechtheion. It seems you know much about this place. Well done, wanderer.
Κατέχεις ωραίων
Περίπολε και
δρυμούς,
τελετάχα,
ελθέ Θεά
Θεόν
σώτηρα.
Πάτερ,
As you wish. Hopefully we will see each other again soon.
και των κομμών. Επικαλούμε σε μάκα. Ευρέτεινά σχολεία.
Welcome to Athens, wanderer. More specifically, welcome to the musical hub of the city, the Odeon. Sometimes, when the burdens of life begin to weigh heavy on my shoulders, I come here, close my eyes, and surrender myself to the music. It makes me feel like I'm a child again. My mother singing me to sleep with a gentle lullaby. The Odeon was where musicians came to share their songs with the public. The melodies played here caught the wind and drifted through the air, soothing the souls of Athenians across the city. Come find me when your visit is complete, and we will talk about the things you've learned. See you soon, Wanderer.
Music played an important part in almost every aspect of ancient Greek life. Whether attending a public gathering, rubbing elbows at a dinner party, laying out offerings in a temple, or marching into battle, there was a song for everything. Aristotle even wrote that music increased the efficiency of laborers, and it was often played for rowers and field pickers to keep them working at a steady rhythm.
Επικαλούμε σε Μάκαρ, πολιώνυμε, περίπολε και τελετάρχα, Θεόν Πάτερ
Musical contests, or agones, were originally only held during religious festivals. Over time, they became cultural events in their own right, and attracted musicians and spectators from all over the Greek world. For example, the Athenian Panathenea festival featured competitions for instrument playing and poetry recitation. The Dionysia festival included contests between groups of male singers to see who could best perform a dithyramb, a merry hymn in honor of the god Dionysus. While these contests could be attended by all, women weren't allowed to compete in them. In the early days of the competitions, winners only received a crown and an ego boost for their talents. But from the Hellenistic period onward, the rewards were upgraded to cash prizes. These prizes were large enough for musicians to make a fortune, especially if they moved from festival to festival. The Odeon of Pericles was built sometime between the 440s and 430s BCE. The building was commissioned by Pericles for use in the Panathenea festival. The Odeon was also a venue for poetry readings, political rallies, and philosophical performances. According to ancient sources, the original design of the Odeon was inspired by the tent of the Persian king Xerxes, a spoil of war the Athenians salvaged after their decisive victory at Salamis in 480 BCE. The building's roof was made of timber from captured Persian ships. In this sense, the Odeon was both a triumphant symbol of Athens and an insult to their Persian enemies. This structure was considered one of the grandest architectural accomplishments of ancient Athens. In ancient Greece, there was a type of music for almost any occasion. Complicated songs like hymns, paeans, and dithyrambs were meant for the ears of the gods, and as such were usually played during religious ceremonies and civic life. Meanwhile, a hymneus was a song performed at weddings, and a threnody accompanied funeral processions. For more merry occasions like symposia, scholia were the soundtrack of choice. However, drama was considered the epitome of artistic expression, since it combined songs with poetry, dance, acting, and costumes. Plays were thought to be the connection between mortals and gods, and the songs that accompanied them, especially those from the tragedies of Euripides, often became huge hits in the rest of Greece.
τελικός του τεστή λόγος ικανός να γύριζε εκ της κλίνης.
Η τραγωδία κινείται μεταξύ τριών βαθμίδων.
Hello again. I trust your visit was worthwhile, and that learning of music was a feast for your mind. I know it was for mine. Is there anything else you'd like to do? Fancy yourself an expert on music? Then let's put your knowledge to the test. Which of the following songs was played at weddings? Correct. Imeneos was performed at weddings to wish the couple a happy and prosperous union. Let's move on to the second question. The Odyssey of Pericles was modeled after spoils of war from which Athenian enemy? Correct. Not only was the design based on the tent of the Persian king Xerxes, but the building's roof was made of wood from captured Persian ships. Only one question remains. According to Aristotle, music was especially important to which group of people? Aristotle actually believed music should not be part of children's education, as it would distract them from their studies. Try again. You are correct. Aristotle believed music improved certain motor skills, so it was played for field pickers and rowers to increase their work output. You definitely have an ear for music, Wanderer. I applaud you. Farewell, Wanderer. I hope you enjoyed the sweet sounds of the Odeon.
Αλόκοτον τα μάλ. Άλλος συνεργάζεται με την εντίδεστε και επικρίνουν σε συμφάγει. Τελικός του τεστή λόγος ικανός να γύριζε εκ της κλίνης. Τι χαρακτήρες επεστραγούν. Μεγαλώνει με θεά, αθλαόν, νονίτη, πολύ ολφέ, πολύ λίστη, νίδα καπόλου.
Συμμορείτε πληροφορία να λαμβάνω.
Η τραγωδία διαφύρει τους...
Πολιώνυμε, πυρήπολε και τελετάρκαρος, Θεόν πάτεριζε.
Μία πίπνους αναμένει στο λέει.
Επικαλούμε σε Μάκαρ, Πολιώνυμε, Περίπολε και...
Είναι αντιβάλλομεν το θέον γένεστε εις την άρση λογισμών. Άλλο της δέμιδος ναός, ούκ εστί μανίος.
Welcome, Wanderer, to one of the most prestigious places in Greece, the theater. I I'd tell you, but I think it's best to let the actors speak for themselves. The theater was where audiences gathered to watch plays. They were the highest form of art in Greece, and people saw theater as a symbol of complete harmony between the mortal world and the divine. When you're done taking in the sights and sounds, come see me, and we'll talk more. Until then, Wanderer.
Μόνον όταν το επιχείρημα το μηδενιστεί.
Theater is not just part of geek culture, but was a major part of Greek culture. In Athens, comedies and dramas originated from the dancing and singing performed by members of the cult of Dionysus. Between 536 and 533 BCE, theater's burgeoning importance in Athens was demonstrated when the responsibility of organizing tragedies was entrusted to the Archon, the highest-ranking magistrate in the city. From then on, theater grew rapidly in popularity, and soon, a permanent space for performing and watching plays was built on the slope of the Acropolis. During the 5th century BCE, theater became intertwined with Athens' democracy. It often functioned as an echo chamber for political ideas, and in some cases, it could even influence public opinion. As a result, in the 4th century BCE, Plato coined the term theatrocracy to describe his city's politics.
Σοφόκλης, άγε και φέρε πλειάδα χορευτών και τραγωδία. Μετά τι παριστάνε το άλλο.
Επικαλούμεσαι.
Theatrical competitions were held in the sanctuary of Dionysus Eleutherios, god of wine and patron of drama. Dionysus was the son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Semele. Stories say that Zeus, who had fallen in love with Semele, appeared to her holding a lightning bolt in his hand. Semele was tragically struck dead by the lightning, but Zeus managed to save her unborn child, keeping the embryo in his thigh until it fully gestated. This is why the name Dionysus is sometimes thought to mean born twice. In Athens, theater was a part of the cult of Dionysus, and stage productions in the god's honor were held during festivals like the Linnea and the Great Dionysia. In Athens, there were 3 festivals that honored Dionysus with drama performances: the rustic Dionysias, the Linnea, and the Great Dionysia. For the rustic Dionysia, each deme of Attica organized their own Dionysiac procession. The parades were full of phallic songs, dances, and symbols meant to signify fertility, and participants wore drunkard masks and sang bawdy lyrics about the god. The Linnea was the oldest Dionysian festival. It was exclusively reserved for Greek citizens and mostly made up of comedy performances. Finally, the Great Dionysia was the most important festival. Taking place over several days, it began with a parade called a Phallophori, followed by a dithyramb contest, and ending with consecrated drama competitions. The Great Dionysia was supervised by the head magistrate known as the Archon, who was assisted by 12 other magistrates. Among his duties, the Archon picked Chorigoi, rich Athenian citizens responsible for providing the budget for rehearsals and performances. 2 days before the Dionysia, a ceremony called the Proagon took place where playwrights introduced their work. The Dionysia finally began in earnest with a procession to the god's temple, followed by sacrifices and a symposium. The next 2 days centered on dithyramb contests, while the final 4 days were dedicated to drama competitions. The contest's outcomes were decided by 10 judges who were appointed at random by the Archon. The judges placed their votes in an urn, and 5 of the votes were randomly picked to determine the winner. All Athenian stage actors were male, regardless of whether they were playing men or women. Tragedies originally featured only one actor performing alongside a chorus, eventually reaching a maximum of 4. Adding more roles opened up the opportunity for dramatic dialogue. During performances, they prepared themselves in the skene, a building that served as a backstage area, before emerging onto the proskenion, or stage. The skene could be painted to represent backdrops like palaces, temples, and tombs. Its roof was reserved for appearances by the gods. These gods could be moved around with a crane called a mechane, which produced spectacular visual effects. On stage, actors wore masks and elaborate costumes. For tragedies, they were adorned with magnificent clothes. While for comedies, actors playing male characters wore hugely exaggerated phalluses, probably to maximize the laughs. The centerpiece of the theater was the orchestra, or dancing place. It was a large, circular area that hosted choral performances, religious rites, and, presumably, acting. Choruses were composed of men wearing masks and costumes. Any Athenian citizen could be choratai, as long as they were selected by the chorus director. Chorus members also served as the equivalent of a curtain, as their entrance and exit marked the beginning and end of the play. New costumes and masks were produced for the chorus for every new play, and they were often just as impressive and elaborate as the performances. For example, Aristophanes' comedies feature the chorus dressing as wasps, frogs, birds, clouds, and islands. One of his plays, The Knights, even had men riding other men dressed as horses. The centerpiece of the theater was the orchestra, or dancing place. It was a large, circular area that hosted choral performances, Athens Theatron, or performance space, could seat up to... Athens Theatron, or performance space, could seat up to 17,000 people, nearly a tenth of the population of Attica. Its excellent acoustics made it ideal for drama, but it was also sometimes used for political meetings and parades. The theater was accessible to everybody. This did not mean that seating was free, though. The first rows were normally where priests and public officials sat, while the central part of the auditorium was reserved for ambassadors and guests of honor. There is also evidence that men and women sat separately. In general, theater audiences were emotional and noisy. During performances, they would shout, curse, and throw things depending on their mood, and their reactions were just as much a part of the experience as the acting. "17,000 people, nearly a tenth of the population of Attica. Its excellent acoustics made it ideal for drama, but it was also sometimes used for political meetings and parades. The theater was accessible to everybody. This did not mean that seating was free, though. The first rows were normally where priests and public officials sat, while the central part of the auditorium was reserved for ambassadors and guests of honor. There is also evidence that men and women sat separately. In general, theater audiences were emotional and noisy. During performances, they would shout, curse, and throw things depending on their mood, and their reactions were just as much a part of the experience as the acting.
Hello again, Wanderer. I hope your visit was entertaining. Though all art forms were important in Greek culture, none had the same prestige as theater, which provided a unique experience with every performance. Is there anything else you'd like to do? Really? Then let's begin. Who was Dionysos' mother? Correct! Unfortunately, Semele died before her son was born, but Zeus saved the unborn baby and raised him as a god. Next, another question. Which competitions took place on the second and third days of the Great Dionysia? No, the drama contests were reserved for the final 4 days. Dionysos was the god of wine, so there's no doubt drinking occurred during... Keep trying. The Dionysia was more about... No, the drama contests were reserved for the final 4 days of the festival. Try again. Yes, the Thyramvi were hymns dedicated to Dionysos, and the Thyrambos contests were held on the second and third days of the festival. And finally, the last question. Which of the following is the oldest festival dedicated to Dionysos? The Great Dionysia was one of the largest festivals dedicated to the god. You are correct. The Linnea was the oldest Dionysiac festival. Congratulations, Wanderer. You're a very studious theater-goer. Then I will leave you be. Farewell, Wanderer.
το πατρί σου ότι έδι πάμε να προφύγει.
Ήκουεσαν ότι φυγά...
Ναι, άπαξε οι συνήθειες πάγονται πότε.
Greetings, Wanderer. It is my pleasure to introduce you to a unique tour. One that won't take you to impressive landmarks or famous battle sites, but through a typical Athenian home. If Olympus is Zeus's sanctuary, then my house is my own. It is a place where I can shelter myself from the noise and stress of city life. For an outgoing people like the Greeks, the house was a refuge of privacy. Inside, they could escape from the constant demands of civic life to enjoy the simple pleasures of family life. Look for me when you are done, and we can discuss the things you've seen. Farewell for now.
The house, or oikos, was a residence for Greek families and their slaves. Contrary to modern houses, which look outward, the Greek household was built to look inward on a courtyard. The courtyard was the house's central fixture. It was the building's main source of daylight, and also the location of religious altars dedicated to worship. The building itself was made up of familiar accommodations, including bedrooms, storage rooms, a kitchen, and a living room. Women were generally in charge of tending to the home, which in Greece was called oikonomia, a term that inspired the modern word economy. A pasta was a corridor that connected a house's courtyard to its residential section. Archaeological evidence from the city of Olynthos reveals that pastas were added to Greek home design in the 5th century BCE. Greeks had no qualms about combining their work and their private lives, and many of them worked from home. Artisans like blacksmiths, sculptors, and potters often had workshops in their houses. Some even operated small stores to sell their work. Similarly, doctors were known to treat patients in special offices located in their homes. Women also worked in the house and were responsible for making textiles, as well as producing clothes and supervising weaving, which was carried out by slaves. If the household was wealthy enough, they could even produce a surplus of textiles to sell in times of financial difficulty. The inner courtyard was the nexus of the house. Functionally, it allowed air to circulate, and also provided access to most of the rooms. It also sometimes housed a well or a cistern that collected rainwater. In the center of the courtyard was an altar to Zeus Hercules, who served as the protector of the household. Women would often use the space to sew and cook, while children used it as a play area. Furthermore, if the family had pets or animals, the courtyard was where they were allowed to run free. The bathroom was located in the back of the house. Much like today, it was used for cleaning and washing, although the Greeks used chamber pots instead of toilets.